The gorilla has two wives, one pulled him forwards and the other backwards, but what he did was amazing. The air inside the enclosure felt wrong long before anyone could explain why. It was thick, almost suffocating, carrying a damp, metallic scent that clung to the back of the throat. The sky above the sanctuary had turned a dull, bruised gray, pressing down like a silent warning. Even the wind seemed hesitant, brushing weakly against the dense leaves as if it, too, sensed the tension building below. At the center of it all stood Kibo, a massive silverback, his fur dark as storm clouds, streaked with a fading band of silver across his back that shimmered faintly under the dim light. His chest rose and fell with slow, controlled breaths, but there was something fractured in the rhythm, something unsettled. And on either side of him, pulling in opposite directions, were the two females who had shared his world for years. Nala, older, steady, her deep brown eyes filled with a quiet authority. Her movements were deliberate, grounded, like roots buried deep beneath the forest floor. And Zara, younger, restless, her energy sharp and electric. Her fingers trembled with urgency as she tugged at Kibo's arm, her soft whimpers slicing through the heavy silence. One pulled him forward, the other pulled him back. It wasn't play. It wasn't dominance. It was desperation. Kibo didn't resist them the way a silverback normally would. There was no chest beating, no thunderous roar to assert control. Instead, he stood frozen, his massive frame trembling slightly, his eyes darting between them as if caught in a storm he couldn't navigate. Then, something happened that made even the most experienced caretakers stop in their tracks. Kibo lowered his head, not in submission, but in confusion. And what he did next, no one saw coming. Before we go any further, take a moment to pause right here. If you're watching this, wherever you are in the world, let us know in the comments. Tell us what time it is where you're sitting right now, what city or country you're in. These stories travel far, and there's something powerful about knowing how many hearts are listening together. And if stories like this move you, don't forget to like and subscribe. You're part of this journey now. The sanctuary itself stretched across acres of dense, breathing jungle, where the scent of damp earth mixed with the sweetness of decaying leaves. It was a place designed to feel like home, not a cage. Sunlight usually filtered through the canopy in soft golden ribbons, warming the ground in gentle patches. But today, that warmth was missing. Kibo had lived here for over a decade. Rescued as a young male, he had grown into a leader, not through force alone, but through something rarer: balance. He was calm when others panicked, patient when others fought. His presence alone could quiet an entire troop. Nala had been there almost as long. She was his anchor, the one who stayed close during storms, who groomed him with slow, methodical care, her fingers moving through his thick fur with a tenderness that spoke of years of trust. Zara came later. She was younger, wild at heart, her movements quick and unpredictable. Where Nala was stillness, Zara was motion. And yet, somehow, Kibo had made space for both of them. He moved between their energies like a bridge, never choosing one over the other. Until now. In the days leading up to this moment, something had shifted. The keepers noticed it first in the smallest details. Kibo wasn't eating as much. The crisp snap of fruit between his teeth had become rare. He would sit for long stretches, staring into nothing, his massive hands resting loosely on the ground. The smell of the enclosure began to change. A faint, acidic undertone crept into the air, subtle but unmistakable. It was the scent of stress, of something inside the body beginning to falter. Nala stayed close, her grooming becoming more frequent, almost obsessive. She would press her forehead gently against his shoulder, her breathing slow, as if trying to steady something invisible. But Zara grew agitated. She paced. She pulled at him. She tried to lead him away, her soft cries growing sharper, more insistent. And now, here they were. One pulling him forward, the other pulling him back. The veterinarians watched from a distance, their concern deepening with every passing minute. There were no obvious injuries, no signs of infection. But Kibo's behavior was wrong in a way that couldn't be ignored. "He's caught between them," one keeper whispered, her voice tight with unease. But it wasn't just between the two females. It was something deeper, something hidden. As the tension escalated, Zara let out a sudden, piercing call. It echoed through the enclosure, bouncing off the enclosure walls and disappearing into the thick canopy above. She yanked harder, her small frame straining against Kibo's immense weight. Nala responded instantly, pulling him back with equal force, her grip firm but not aggressive. Kibo staggered. For a moment, it looked as though he might collapse. The ground beneath him was damp, cool against his knuckles. The scent of wet soil rose sharply as his weight shifted, mixing with the faint musk of his fur. His breathing grew heavier now, each inhale rougher than the last. And then he made a choice. But not the one anyone expected. Instead of moving toward either of them, Kibo slowly sank to the ground. The movement was deliberate, almost ceremonial. Zara froze, Nala stilled. The entire enclosure seemed to hold its breath. Kibo lay there, his massive chest pressing against the cool earth, his eyes half closed. The tension in his body softened, not into weakness, but into something else. Acceptance. That was the moment everything changed, because as the veterinarians moved closer, something became visible that had been hidden until now. A deep, inflamed swelling along Kibo's side. It had been concealed beneath his thick fur, masked by his stillness, his refusal to show vulnerability. But now, as he lay exposed, the truth surfaced with brutal clarity. An internal injury, severe, painful. The acidic scent in the air suddenly made sense. The lethargy, the confusion, the pulling. Zara hadn't been trying to dominate him. She had been trying to move him, to get him somewhere safer, somewhere different. Nala, on the other hand, had been trying to keep him still, to protect him. Two instincts, both rooted in care, both pulling in opposite directions, and Kibo had understood them both. That was why he didn't choose. That was why he lay down, because in doing so, he allowed the truth to be seen. The intervention was immediate. The air filled with urgency, the sharp scent of antiseptic cutting through the earthy atmosphere. The ground trembled slightly as equipment was brought in, the quiet sanctuary suddenly alive with controlled chaos. Kibo didn't resist. Even as the sedative took hold, his breathing slowing, his eyes heavy, there was a strange calm about him. His body relaxed into the hands of those trying to save him, as if he knew this was the only path forward. Nala stayed close until the very last moment, her fingers brushing lightly against his arm. Zara hovered at a distance, her movements restless but quieter now, as if the storm inside her had begun to settle. The procedure was long, delicate. The injury, it turned out, was worse than anyone had feared. A deep internal infection, likely caused by a hidden trauma, had been spreading silently. But it had not been too late, not because of human intervention alone, but because of what had happened before it, because of the pulling. Because of the refusal to ignore something unseen. The days that followed were filled with a different kind of tension. The enclosure smelled cleaner now, the sharpness of disinfectant replacing the earlier heaviness. The light returned slowly, filtering through the leaves in soft, golden streams. Kibo lay in recovery, his body still, but no longer burdened by that invisible weight. Nala was the first to approach him when he regained consciousness. She moved slowly, her steps measured, her eyes fixed on his face. When she reached him, she didn't touch him immediately. She simply sat beside him, her breathing steady. And then, gently, she leaned in. Their foreheads touched. For a moment, nothing else existed. Not the enclosure, not the keepers, not the world beyond. Just two beings breathing in sync. Zara joined them soon after. This time, there was no pulling, no urgency. She settled beside them, her energy softer now, her movements careful. She reached out, her fingers brushing lightly against Kibo's arm. And he responded. A small movement, barely noticeable, but enough. The tension that had once filled the air dissolved completely, replaced by something warm, something deeply human in its familiarity. Relief. In the weeks that followed, Kibo regained his strength. His movements became steady again, his presence once more filling the enclosure with quiet authority. But something had changed, not just in him, in all of them. The bond between Kibo, Nala, and Zara seemed deeper now, shaped by something they had endured together. There was a new softness in their interactions, a quiet understanding that went beyond instinct. It spoke of awareness, of connection, of something we are only beginning to understand. Because what happened that day wasn't just about survival. It was about perception. About two beings sensing what could not be seen, responding in different ways, yet driven by the same force. Care, love, a kind of intelligence that doesn't rely on words. As humans, we often think of ourselves as the pinnacle of emotional understanding, but moments like this challenge that belief. They remind us that empathy is not ours alone, that there is a language beyond speech, a language of presence, of touch, of knowing. Kibo didn't choose between them, he chose to listen, and in doing so, he allowed both truths to exist. If this story moved you, if it made you pause and reflect even for a moment, take that feeling and share it. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and pass this story on to someone who needs to hear it. And before you go, think about this. Have you ever experienced a moment where an animal seemed to understand something you couldn't explain? A look, a gesture, a quiet connection that felt deeper than instinct? Tell us your story. Because sometimes the most powerful truths are the ones we cannot put into words.